You are listening to the 5am podcast, and today is your day. Welcome to the 5am podcast, where we bring you insightful conversations with thought leaders and influencers who are making headway and definitely some waves in their callings and industry. Today, we are joined by a man whose life embodies resilience in its purest form. He's a thriver, adventurer, advocate, and storyteller who has journeyed from the corporate boardrooms to the Arctic wilderness, all while navigating stage 4 cancer. As a former PwC partner turned author of 5 inspirational books, including Living While Dying and Chasing My Northern Lights, Thom doesn't just survive life's harshest seasons, he thrives in them. From crafting bespoke furniture on Cape Cod to planning expeditions across Iceland and Greenland, his mission to light the path for others has inspired countless individuals facing their own challenges. Today, we'll explore how adventure, creativity, and community become powerful tools for transformation, even in our darkest hours. Get ready for a conversation that might just change how you view adversity forever. Now, before we roll that intro, a warm welcome to those of you who are listening and watching. Please consider sharing this riveting conversation with 3 of your friends. I know many are going to enjoy this conversation. And a big thanks to those who've given a 5-star review on your favorite podcast player. We do appreciate that. And of course, thanks to those who ventured over to buymeacoffee.com/5am podcast and bought us a few cups of coffee this week and last. We do appreciate all that support. And now, here's that intro. Thom, welcome to the 5am podcast.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the opportunity. Looking forward to it.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it too. We're going to have a great conversation. Your transformation from the world of business to adventurer and author is probably a dream for some and fascinating for others. What was there a moment of realization that first sparked this significant shift in your life's direction?
Well, there was. Like most guys, when I turned 40, I started to reevaluate what I was doing, how I was doing it, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I was in a position where I was just upset with my life. I was completely opposite. Life couldn't have been going better. 2 lovely daughters, successful business, right? I'm their coach of the basketball and soccer teams, have involved in the community, involved in boards and stuff like that. So it was a pretty full and active life. But I for some reason, there was something missing, right? Something missing. And I'm a city boy, grew up in Detroit, right? Then lived in Boston, then Charlestown, and considered myself more of a weekend warrior than anything else, where it was all about the sport.
Yeah.
And if the sport took you to a venue, all right, then you embraced it, right? So that was it. But in 1996, I said, I think there's more I need to do. And I had a pretty stressful job. I was a consultant on call 24/7. You know how that is, get in the plane, go off to any place in the world. And I knew that I needed to start doing something that forced me to recharge so I could continue with the enthusiasm, sharpness, and willingness to be 100% there, right? And so I decided I wanted to start doing more remote kind of activities. Because you go down to the beach, well, they can give you a call, right?
Yes.
And I've had more than once where they've arranged a helicopter to pick me up and go to a proposal or something like that. And I said, I need to get farther away. So I started taking a look at trips that were like that, where there was no access to phones, no access to, I know in the 90s we didn't have cell phones and stuff like that, but still this idea that I was going to be remote. And that's what I started doing. Started off as 2 weeks at a time, and then slowly grew over time to whatever I could cash in terms of my vacation time, right? Ratchet that stuff up. Still had to take stuff with kids. And so I started doing what I considered to be a different approach. So for instance, my first epic adventure was skiing from Chamonix, France to Zermatt, Switzerland. Now that sounds like, hey, how difficult can it be, right? Slap on some old cross-country skis and you can just cruise along. Wow. This is one of those things where I learned a lot, right? I
Wow.
learned a lot that just wanting to do something and being able to do something are entirely two different points.
Wow.
Because the skill sets I needed for that were not just being a good skier, but being able to ski in snow that's up to your knees with a 60-pound pack on, right?
Wow. Wow.
Sometimes you get to situations where it gets pretty steep because you're skiing up passes and overpasses through saddles. You got to put these things called skins on the bottom of your skis. And even after a while, having those on, the steepness requires you to change those and actually wear crampons on your skis.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, yeah. So you clump, clump, clump. And then when it gets too much, you take that off, put the skis in your back, and then you rope up and then continue with ice hacks. Oh, yeah, it was crazy. And then when you get to the other side, it's as steep. And so
Wow.
you got to figure a way to platform so you can put your skis on. Anyhow,
Yes.
it was an interesting experience. And I learned something beyond what I just mentioned in terms
Mhm.
of, wanting to do something and being able to do something, two different things. That the
Yeah.
first day or after the first 2 days, the guide, because there were about 8 of us, and
Okay.
they were all pretty serious mountaineers. In
Okay.
fact, one of the fellas that was on the trip are you familiar with John Krakauer's Into Thin Air?
No, I'm not.
It's a story about, it was back in 94, I think, about 2 expeditions that were climbing Everest, and they made
Okay.
a movie out of it, and a lot of people died, right?
Wow.
So
Okay.
one of the fellas was on that trip.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, now I'm really worried about my skill set here because
Yeah.
I lift ski. I don't
Yeah.
do this
Right.
off-piste stuff, right? But we got through it. We got through it. And it was very remarkable. I thoroughly enjoyed, but that was the beginning. And I said,
Right.
yes, this is exactly what I want to do, right? Be someplace, no one get a hold of you,
Yeah.
and do your thing. And so
Wow.
that transpired into a lot of different activities, whether it
I
was diving down in the Yucatan in terms of cenotes there, or heading down to the Barrier Reef, or kayaking up in Prince William Sound for 2 weeks, or heading down to the Exumas archipelagos. So it's been it's been a real adventure in terms of these different activities, different
Yeah.
sports.
Wow. Yeah, I gotta hand it to you for that ski one. I was thinking because I love to downhill ski, and I have looked at you can get those packages where you're downhill skiing through the Alps. So that's kind of what I was thinking when you first said that. But man, you were really laying it on the line and leaving nothing on the field
No,
for.
I left. I think I left a few pieces of myself, but
I bet.
I
Yes.
did follow a lot. I got to be honest. I did follow a lot, right?
Yeah.
As I tell my daughters, uh, if you're not failing, you're not trying.
Yeah. Right. Oh, that's good advice right there. Because my wife and I were kind of, looking back over things, and I have a tendency to be too critical of myself. And fortunately, she's the encourager, and so she was like, "Just hold on a second. I
Right,
mean, you're actually doing something, Michael. You're like, you're okay with falling on your face because you can get back up."
right.
And so that I know that you have described yourself as a thriver rather than just a survivor. And then how did you develop that mindset? And something that our guests may not know is that you've also, in part of this, been developing or facing stage 4 cancer. But I don't know if that plays into it. It sounds like it doesn't, because it sounds like you already had this mindset development going on.
Well, it's interesting. There are two different mindsets,
Okay.
right? The mindset of the adventurer pre-cancer days,
Yeah.
all about conquering
Okay.
and accomplishing,
Yeah.
right? And I accomplished, and I did a lot. I peaked, hiked, seen a lot of stuff,
Right.
experienced a lot of things. But now um, I'm doing things at a way slower pace.
Okay.
And so instead of being worried about, it's 1 o'clock, I got to reach that pass in a certain
Yeah.
amount of time while
Yeah.
still light out so I can come back down. I need to pick this up, right?
Yeah. Right.
And now I'd say, no, I'm not doing anything tomorrow. So let's just set up camp here,
Right.
enjoy, and then press on tomorrow because there's no rush to this.
Right.
And so that there's there's been a huge shift in my mindset in terms of being more present and by doing so, appreciating where I am.
Yeah.
Right. Because one story last February, I took a 4-month, it was supposed to be a 4-month trip down to South America.
Gotcha.
And it started off by an expedition off of the Antarctica coastline. And I was kayaking down there. Beautiful. Talk about remote, unbelievable, right?
Yes.
But it's not silent, what you would think with all the snow, absorbing everything.
Right. Yeah.
But you hear all kinds of animals. You hear the birds. You hear the seals and so on. But I just lost my train of thought.
It was about the there was no silence. It was loud. Kayaking.
I went down there. I went down to Argentina for a reason. Okay. Oh yeah. So I went down by myself, and then my significant other joined me about a month later, and so we started hiking and trekking through Patagonia.
Wow.
And this one day, I wasn't feeling very well, and nauseous, stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So we're starting to go, and there's 3 other people in our group of hikers. And I said, listen, you guys have to come back this way, right? Yep. And I said, well, then this is where I'm going to be. I just sat down for 3 hours while they walked off. Now, at first, I was like, you're an idiot, right? I mean, you come out, I was really frustrated with myself, right? For not being able to man up and, persevere through. But I said, sometimes you just have to, man, it's no weakness, right? And I know I couldn't go out and back and still be enjoying it.
Right.
Michael, those 3 hours were the most incredible hours because I just sat there and I watched the change that was taking place, right?
Wow.
Because the Patagonia is very rugged. Have you ever been down there?
No, I'd love to go though.
Well, it's more rugged than the Rockies up by Banff, I got to tell you. And I think that drive from Banff up to Jasper is the most stunning drive in the world.
Absolutely.
These mountains are a little more rugged than that, right? And so I would sit and just watch. I'd see the clouds come in and they'd be starting to circle around the tops, and then they would get covered, and then they would pop up again, right? And over here would be a fox coming out, right? And so my silence caused the animals to start coming out.
Nice.
I would have never experienced what I did. And I was like, all right, I can live this way. So I don't have to be climbing and hiking. I can be just enjoying.
Right.
But it still means you have to get out there, right? It still means you have to make the effort, put one foot in front of the other, and go.
Yeah.
So different times.
Oh, that's super. And so to our listeners, feel free to write in the comments, maybe a time where you had plans and then you called an audible and you just sat back and you thought, wow, I'm so glad I listened to that prompting, or I had that thought and I just chilled out and relaxed and unbelievable things happened. So let us know in the comments if that's something like what you've experienced. I know there was a time my wife and I were in Montana. Of course, that's an outdoor woman paradise. And we were on the interstate and we thought, we need a break. We need to actually get in, see some wilderness. And we found this little out of the way spot. There was this creek running by and we had stopped. We were taking it all in, and out comes this doe it's a solid wall of trees. And out comes this doe, and she looks at us to the left. In our vehicle, she looks this way and sees there's no vehicles coming, and out she trots down into the creek. And we just thought, wow, that was worth the price of admission right there. Just seeing some of those still moments.
Yep.
It's fascinating. I wanted to ask about your website. It mentions lighting the path for others facing life's harshest seasons. Can you maybe share a story about someone who found their way through the darkness because of your guidance?
Well, I can. So I deal with a lot of guys suffering from prostate cancer, right?
Okay.
And when you get told that it's no longer curable,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
That is like a smack on the gut,
Yeah.
right? And you say, all right, what do I do? Right?
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. And a certain level of inertia sets in, right? Because you're
Mm.
feeling like you're being a victim, right? You want to just crawl into bed, bring the covers
Yeah.
up, and just kind
Yeah.
of warm up. And I shared with them um, about I shared with them the Living While Dying book, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And that pretty much talked about the initial awareness of becoming unknown that I've got this disease.
Hmm.
And the most overwhelming part, and it's not just having that disease, but anytime you're told you can't do
Yeah.
something, right,
Right.
is this feeling of loss of control,
Yeah.
right? I don't control my life anymore. I don't, so it's like I feel emasculated, right? Because I'm not in charge anymore, right? Because
Yeah.
as guys, providers, protectors, right? It's all
Yeah.
about our game plan and moving ahead. When you get that kind of a thing, it's like, you just get slapped back at your chair. And so we talked a bit. And I said, listen, that's right. We have no control over that part. All right. But you
Yeah.
have control over what you want to do each and every day. All right. You have control in what you want to choose to do. And it's a
Mhm.
funny thing. We have certain emotions like happiness, grief, anger, which are not things that we can control.
Yeah.
Those are reactionary kinds of emotions, right? You get great grades in school. You're happy as all get out, right? Because of
Yes.
that event, right?
Yeah.
And so I started talking about there are emotions you can choose in the midst of this. You can
Hmm.
choose joy. Joy is not a reactive emotion. It's something that we construct, right? We
Yeah.
can create joy.
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah.
so that's a control point. So think about things you like to do. Think about
Yeah.
things that make you happy. Think about things that you feel passionate about, and
Mhm.
and focus on that. You can't do the cancer thing, so put that aside. Guys
Yeah.
are great at compartmentalizing, so compartmentalize that, and then just focus on the
Yes.
stuff we can control. Now, you don't need to do what I do. I'm going to go down to Antarctica. You don't need to do that, but I suspect there's a conservation park not too far away from you that's got probably
Yes.
a lovely walk, probably on a pond, right? And you can
Yep.
experience the same outdoor stuff. It's just
Yeah.
you can control that, and so
Yeah. That's right.
the awareness is figuring out what you can control and acknowledging what you can't. I mean, this is not a new thing. The
Hmm.
12-step program talks about it very clearly, right?
That's right. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I know in our town, as you and I were chatting, we're close to the Rocky Mountains, and we have a resident moose and his lady friend. we've got some beavers, and my wife and I were just out there sunny day on the weekend, and just being able to take that in, that
Right,
we can just get out of the house, get off the couch, and
right,
on the community group, everyone posts photos of where the resident moose happens to be in whose yard he's in, and it'll be like my wife will say, oh, I don't know, Randy, the moose, he was over on 20th Street today.
yeah,
And just being able to change our focus, change our surroundings, and just doing that enjoyment of what's actually around us.
right.
I did want to ask you kind of the that advice for younger people in business, because we have a lot of people, according to our analytics on YouTube, of that 25 to 35 age range. And I'll pull that 35 number out because I'm sure you spent at least 35 years in that corporate career.
Right.
Did Was there an identity crisis that you had upon your retirement? And is there some advice that you would give to that 25 to 35 age group of our listeners as they're planning for their future?
That's that's a worry that most firms have about their
Mm.
retirees, right?
Oh,
Especially my
yeah.
company. So I can put in the correlation of my company. My company's very worried because you have these guys and ladies who spent their entire years as being accountants. Let's put it
Yeah.
this way. And it's not an easy day. It's a long day. And so you only have so many hours to spend time
Yeah.
working, family, community. not much more, right?
Yeah.
And so when you do leave, it's like, who am I going to be?
Yeah.
So my advice is this: find a passion, right? And try to pursue that as much as you can while working. For me, I was really fortunate in the sense that I've always had an adventurous spirit, right?
Right.
So I graduated from college in 1978, right? So that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I graduated with a dual degree in computer science
Wow.
and accounting, right? And that wasn't it's not as common as it is today, right? Because
Right.
everyone has a degree in computer
Mm-hmm.
science, right? They can program, they can do reporting, but I actually wrote operating systems. I designed. I was a real computer scientist, right?
Gotcha.
Um, but I also was an accountant because when I graduated, I said, I don't know if this technology thing's going to really last,
Yeah.
right?
Is it really
I
going to
know
take off?
accounting will be,
Yeah.
right? But
Yes.
the adventure spirit came into the road that I was pursuing had not been traveled before, right? Because at that time, there were very few companies who had actually embraced technology. Their
Yeah.
accounting systems are still done in a ledger, right?
Right.
Annually, right? And so when I came in, or my company, we came in to help. This is new for everybody, myself included. So it forced me to always be ahead of the curve in terms of the technologies out there. So I've always had this kind of intellectual curiosity about stuff, so that I'm always ahead of the curve for other people.
Yeah.
That adventuresome mindset is what I had.
Yeah.
So it's, in 1996, when I had this this change of, I need to do something
Yeah.
different.
Right.
It was very helpful because all I did was just change my focus on my adventure concept from
Yes.
business to the outdoors, and so that
Yeah.
allowed me. Because when I retired, I had a whole list of things I wanted to do. Right, I
Right.
wanted to travel more.
Yeah.
I wanted to get back to the community,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to work on my right brain. I wanted to work on my creative part,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Because I've done a lot of analytical stuff. And that was always something I wanted to do. When I was working, I knew that at age 55, I was stopping. Full
Yeah.
stop. I don't care how good I was. I don't care what backlog. I don't care how much money I was making. I was stopping because that next chapter was very important to me.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so for me, I always had this notion of it will come to an end,
Yeah.
right? And so my advice to the younger folks is be mindful of that because it will come to an end.
Yeah.
And if you have other things you love to do or things that you're teeing up that you can
Yeah.
do when you retire, that's super, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that's my advice.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I recently did an interview with Dr. Murray Sabrin from the Mises Institute, and he was talking about all those young students that he had at the college that he taught at in New Jersey.
Yeah,
And the reason I'm bringing that conversation up is he was saying the same thing to his students and to our listeners too. Of it's not too late. Plan for that future. Consider your future now, even in your 20s and 30s.
right.
Now, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, my email address is a good start.
Okay,
It's 123 dot Thom dot Barrett at gmail.com.
great.
The other way is to go to my website, which is livinglifewhiledying.com. And we've got a subscription to our newsletter. We've got a
Okay,
subscription to the blogs. We've got, there's a few things that we have. Our books are there, so that if they wanted to buy a book, they go there,
yeah,
go to Amazon, or if they just want to send me a note, engage in a conversation. And then I'm also on Substack.
okay.
Are you familiar with that platform?
Yes, I am.
So, and that's a great means for creating conversations and chats
Yes,
amongst more than one person.
yeah.
So those are the ways in which someone can get a hold of
Oh,
me.
that's excellent. So I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your travel, but I had mentioned in the intro that you like to do some woodworking or craft some furniture, and got this beauty here. I call this my
All
gem
right.
ball. So I love doing the wood turning and the epoxy, and
No kidding.
I got this beautiful piece right here that I decided I needed to do some other types of art in addition to the wood turning. But
That's
uh,
beautiful.
Can you tell us? Oh, here, I'll give you a tour of this piece. So this is, I love the craftsman style uh, of
I love it.
yeah.
You've got the
So
wood in there for the clouds. You've got the blue. That's beautiful.
and so this is Douglas fir bark
Yeah.
that I picked off Vancouver Island. So that's the water, and then I got Jedediah Simpson or whatever his name is right there. Found this and thought, wow, doesn't that look like a face? But
Unbelievable.
so the reason I bring this up is I wanted to ask you about uh, how did you get into making furniture?
Well, the way I put myself through college, I was a carpenter. I built
Oh,
houses,
okay.
right?
Wow.
And then when I retired, I connected with Habitat for Humanity.
Okay.
That was a big thing for me, building. Um, but before I go into that,
Sure.
I'm going to make one comment about that piece of artwork you had, and
Oh yeah.
you mentioned that a person's name. There, are you familiar with a guy by the name of Robert Goyette?
No, no, that name does not ring a bell.
He's a wood carver. He lives in
Okay.
Terrace, British Columbia,
Okay.
and he's got a shop there, which is pretty cool. But when I was in Terrace, I always travel with my dog, so we had to go for a
Okay.
walk.
Yeah.
And there is an island just outside of Terrace that's got a beautiful area for it's a conservation area. Great
Okay.
walking area. You've got the marshes and water and so on. Have you ever had this feeling someone's looking at you, watching you,
Oh
right?
yes.
Well,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm walking through this forest, and I'm damn certain that there are not just one, but multiple people looking at me. I was like, oh, this is getting a little weird. So I sat down, try to be quiet. Maybe I can see the people moving around so I can see who's around me. Not
Yeah.
it. But I started taking a look at the trees around me, and I noticed that there was something man-made about a tree, right? Or
Okay.
so that carving that looked like of Obadiah,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, Goyette carves faces into the bark onto the trees.
Wow.
He's been doing it for 25 years, right?
Wow.
And as I said, holy shit, is that the only, excuse my language, I apologize.
Yeah. No,
Is
it's
that the
okay.
only one? And I started walking around and it's like, yeah, there were tons of them. And there were some where he had little chalets carved in,
Oh, nice.
chalets. It's like, wow, this man, I love his creativity. And this is forever. Because some of the stuff's been there, as I said, for 25 years. So
Wow.
that little artwork you had there, if you
Yeah.
ever in that area, because it's just outside of Prince Rupert
That's right.
in BC,
Yeah.
terraces. And it's a great little hike and you'll be amazed by that. So anyhow, back to your question. I built houses, so I'm pretty handy. And when I retired, I wanted to do something where I could be creative. That's when I
Yeah.
started making. And I started making boxes. Everyone makes boxes, right?
Yes.
I must
Yeah.
have made 500 boxes, different colors and styles. But then it turned into furniture, cabinetry, and so on and so on. And so for the summertime, that's what I do. And it's a great break in terms of my travels
Yeah.
because I can just get really grounded and create something. And usually for friends. I sell.
Yes.
I got a website, but I'm doing that less and less these days.
Yeah.
Great.
My family gets a lot of handcrafted gifts now. I got to show you this one other thing. So
Oh,
even
sweet.
even the smallest never despise small beginnings, right?
Right.
So this actually started, it became the Seattle Space Needle, I guess.
Yep.
But
Yep.
it started as a mushroom. And I was like, man, I don't like that. So I had to change it. And then I had this little block of wood left. And I thought, boy, wouldn't that look nice
Pretty sweet. Yeah.
as a little mountain there. So my family members, there's a lot of them. They have not been and getting tired of receiving
Good.
some handcrafted things. But can you talk about maybe that how creating something tangible with your hands actually complements other creative processes like maybe writing or somebody's healing journey?
Yep. Well, so when I worked, I gave a lot of advice, right? That's what I did. I was an advisor. But I never saw what I was advising on come to fruition. right? Because I'm always on the leading edge of something. And then, here, you should do this, you should do this. And this is the software. I'll help you put together a project plan, boom, boom, boom. And then years later, they'd be successful, but I have no idea. I never got back into it. So part of the reason why I wanted to build things is that at the end of the day, I can see what I accomplished, whether it was a pile of dirt or dust,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Or something actual. And that to me was a gratification that I had not received while I worked, right?
Yeah.
It's odd, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was happy with my job, but this
Yeah.
was a different kind of gratification.
Yeah.
And it was immediate. I could see what I was doing. The second part was I realized that we've all heard piss poor planning results in poor product.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that came home. If I didn't do a good job of planning, I could end up with a lot of wasted wood.
Yeah.
Because if you ever know, you have to plot everything you want out so that there's not that much waste.
Yeah.
Really focused on there's a good reason for the project plan, right? Yeah. And so I started developing I had these skills before, but now it was fine tuned, right? In terms of the real cost associated to do things. Yeah. And so that allowed me to harness my OCD aspect.
Yes.
I got all the thing going, but then allowed this brain to kick in. I said, I can be creative in terms of what I'm drawing, then transferring it.
Yeah.
The writing part, though, came differently because I suffer from clinical depression. And so about 15 years ago, my doc said, start journaling. And I go, what? My daughters do that, right? I hope they don't hear this.
Yeah.
That's not something, I don't think I could do a good job. He goes, do it. Give it a shot. It's going to take you a minute or two a morning. I said, all right. So I started doing it. The first journal. Today was a good day. Day 2. Today was a better day, period. Right? And it was like, I went this on for a long time and I didn't add anything to it. And it was like, whoa, what am I really doing?
Yeah.
And then something clicked where I started to write more. It was today I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I mean, nothing emotional, but it was just, I got to be more detailed. And then it became routine for me. Every morning I went down, did my little bit in terms of writing, and it became a ritual for me. And then after time, I started to realize, because I was going through a lot of stuff, having an illness, it doesn't leave you in a positive state all the time. Right? Yeah. And so I found by writing, I was able to, instead of compartmentalizing, I was even do better than that. I could actually get it out of my head, on my fingertips, into a piece of paper, and then shelve it, literally. So it wasn't here anymore. Right. And so I did that for 15 years. And of course, my writing went from it's a good day to pages and pages of I felt this way today, right? And blah, blah, blah. And so that created a habit, so to speak. And then the writing just took from there, right? So it was a long process in terms of getting to where I am now about the writing. But now I can't, if a day goes by that I don't write, I feel it. I feel it.
I bet.
It's like someone not going for a run, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I want to say that definitely your life exemplifies finding joy in uncertainty. And for maybe some listeners that are out there that they feel like they're downtrodden or maybe their harshest season of life right now, is you were just talking about journaling. Is that maybe a daily practice, or is there something else that can help to shift their perspective that's worked for you and could work for them?
So the journaling, I couldn't say more about that, right?
Yeah.
I found a tremendous benefit from doing that. The other thing, there's 3 parts to it. These are anchors to my life now, right? So one is practicing gratitude.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it's amazing. When you wake up in the morning, the first thing you say to yourself is, boy, I'm so thankful for being alive this morning.
Yeah.
Right? I'm so thankful to be awaking next to my significant other there. Right? I mean, and that sets a tone of positivity, right? And so, okay, you're already starting a good day by being positive. Then I also believe in intentions, right? And then the intentions aren't like, I'm going to go scale a mountain and it's going to take me 6 months. No, my intention is, what behavior can I exude today, right? What thing that I'd like to focus on, I got to cut out sweets today. That's my intention today, not for a month, not for a year, but today, right? And I break things down into 8-hour increments, if I can put it in that context, right? And then I believe in mindfulness,
Hmm.
right? Being present, 100%. Stop all the thinking. So when you're sitting with someone, you're there 100%. Because I know when my kids were growing up and I was talking with them, trying to help them,
Yeah.
the brain was, I got to do the lawn, I've got to do this, I've got this going on, right?
Yep.
I wasn't really 100% talking with them, engaged, and I may have missed a few things they were telling me that were important to them,
Yeah.
but went right over my head, right?
Yep.
And I found those three things has really had an effect on me in terms of how I view my day.
Yeah.
I view it from a very positive perspective.
Yeah. That's very good.
That helps, right? That helps because
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people suffer inertia because they're caught in the negativism of life.
Yeah.
They're caught in their own negativism, right?
Yeah.
And that can be weary. We all know it. It is weary. It is heavy, right? It's a burden. And it makes it very difficult to get out of bed, very difficult to walk through the door, right?
Yeah.
I know that. I live that. It's not, most people make fun of it in terms of, yeah, really? No. But for those of us who do suffer it, it's
Yeah.
freaking real, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think in thinking back to my career in broadcasting and doing a lot of sports and things like that, inundated with phone calls. And I would tell my wife sometimes the only time I feel like I'm not working is if I'm sleeping. But there was something from with satellite radio at the time. Joel Osteen came on, and he was saying, when you get home and you're in the driveway, make that your last work phone call of the day. And I was like, Joel, that's
Ain't
the
gonna work.
key.
Okay.
That's the key. And it's that mindfulness of I'm going to be present for all the loved ones on the other side of that door.
Right.
And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Like, what a conversation. Am I right? I want to remind you that Thom has his Substack and his website. There's a lot of great resources. Thom had mentioned his newsletter, and you can head over to livinglifewhiledying.com. A lot of great resources, and there's some good books on his site as well that I know many of you are going to enjoy. So, Thom, a sincere and heartfelt thanks for you being here today and just sharing your insights.
Michael, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. It was an enjoyable conversation.
It sure was. We do appreciate all our listeners and viewers. Don't forget to share this with 3 of your friends who need to hear this message, because this was a really good one. And I know I've enjoyed it just doing it. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Thank you, Thom, for joining me today. What a great conversation we've had. Until next time, may you seize your day and enjoy each sunrise and sunset. I'm Michael Klassen.